This is Aer Dogs, a podcast series on the aviation industry that will take you from the boardroom to the boarding gates. In this episode of Aer Dogs, Dec Ryan sits down with Juan Carlos Zuazua. JC is CEO of Viva Aerobus in Mexico, and he talks about becoming CEO at 29, how Irelandia helped shape Viva, and his greatest achievements to date.
How are you? I'm Dec Ryan. Today I'm delighted to be joined by a good friend and a colleague, Juan Carlos Zuazua, CEO of Viva Aerobus. JC, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Dec, for the invite, and hi to all the audience.
Yeah. We always kick off with a bit of fun. Like, when did you become an aerosexual and in love with aviation?
I don't think I'm one yet. I'm still young, but a little bit of more jet in my veins, Dec. But I think the term of aerosexual, when talking to many colleagues who are in the industry and asking them why everybody that comes to this industry, they don't want to leave, right? And just philosophically, I think this industry has such a big purpose, right? So we touch many people's lives. So the contribution to your region, to the country, to the world is amazing, right? And I believe that's what it makes people stick around.
Yeah. One of the things I say, JC, is there's nothing like seeing a family who's never traveled before get on an airplane, and it really just fills your heart with.
It's amazing, and you've seen it in Europe, but I mean in Latin America, which we're a little bit way behind on developing aviation. You see it every day, right? I mean it's amazing, and that's mind blowing. Yeah,
for sure. And listen. Why did you move? I can't remember, but I remember you were in the restaurant business. Why did you move from a profitable business to such a tough business?
I think both industries are tough. They have similarities, Declan. I mean, I believe both industries are service industries. At the end, you're serving the end consumer. Yeah. Different experiences. There was an opportunity to join this startup team 17 years ago, and I think professionally back then, when I was finishing college, starting a couple of restaurants, it was the right thing to do, right? Yeah. Not necessarily I would like to do that for a living, even though I like food a lot. But I think it was a nice move, similarities on industries. Yeah. And I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you certainly have picked tough industries. You know, they're all about margins, aren't they, and costs. So next question, any particular mistake or failure that comes into your mind? Because I love asking this question and I love answering it as well, because, people look at you, or they might look at myself or any of the team we know around the place, and they just assume we didn't make mistakes, or they assume we were lucky and so on. Is there any one particular that comes to mind that you like to say to people and stuff?
Yeah, look, I think. I mean, we started, and you were involved for a quite part of the time of this venture. Yeah. I think when we started the business, we were so dogmatic in following the ULCC Bible and like all the givens, right? That in some part we didn't challenge that status quo. For example, the fact that over 10 years or more we were still unassigned seating, right? Which I mean, it's only one airline in Texas that still does, and they just announced they're going to change it, right? Yeah. So those are the type of things that when we did those changes, we realized that the ultra-local business model would deviate a little bit, would adapt, would be more close to the passengers, would be kind. You could still maintain low costs, but you can have the preference of your consumer. So I believe being so dogmatic at the first years was a stubbornness on my side, on our team, and eventually we realized that passengers were asking for some small changes on the model.
Yeah. So can we dive into that a little bit more, JC? So Viva Aerobus made the decision to move to assigned seating, and what year did you do that?
That was 2013. Okay. When we announced the first aircraft order, we tried to relaunch back then our brand proposition, right? And the biggest pain point our customers had was unassigned seating. I mean, they simply thought it was painful. It was like a battleground. Everybody rushing into their seats, throwing a jersey there to separate the aisle seat, etc. People hated it, right? But I believe what helped us move faster was the inversion of social media, right? Simply before then, we only got complaints by email, yet we didn't hear them as often. When Twitter, Facebook, and all the social media that followed, simply that exacerbated, right, the happiness for.
And remind me, please, JC, were our competitors doing assigned seating?
Yes, everybody changed. Okay. Back then, we were the only Mexican carrier doing unassigned seating, right? So that was like a little bit of the new ones on the market. Many airlines in the US, in the world, were doing unassigned seating, but everybody started to change. So, I mean, right now it's only one airline, Southwest Airlines, still doing it, and they just announced it.
That kind of brings me into a point that's very close to my heart. Why doesn't Wall Street and the US market, and if I offend you, you know me well enough that it's not my intention, but why don't they respect Mexican airlines more?
Look, for many years, I think the Mexican aviation industry has potentially not been the most attractive industry for investors. I mean,
but why? Why?
I mean, for the last 17 years, more than 15 carriers have gone out of business in Mexico, right? Okay, right now the industry is a much more mature, very profitable industry. But after many years and very poorly run airlines, many of them government owned, back then Aeromexico and Mexicana both went bust, government owned. So taxpayers' money had been involved for many, many years. And unproven business models have also tried and failed. So I think right now, at least the three largest airlines are very well run, very well funded. We survived a very tough crisis without government aid, which was the COVID crisis. And here we are, right? I mean, with a very strong balance sheet, the three of the airlines. One of them, of course, went to restructuring. But I think right now, Mexican aviation deserves much more credit, given how.
So sorry to cut across, but so do you get more respect when you're in New York or LA or because it really upset me because I just think people totally underestimate anything south of the border in the US, and so are you seeing a bit more?
Absolutely, all the time that we're talking to the sell side, the research analysts, and on the buy side, all the investment firms. I mean, they're following the industry closely. I mean, they're seeing how the airlines are performing, how they recover from COVID, how the industry is growing. Profitably, very important. The strength of the balance sheet of the airlines without government aid is amazing. I mean, our adjusted net leverage is 1.5 times. I mean, this is record low without any single cent from the government past COVID. So I think the credit is there. Of course, I believe right now airline multiples across the globe are in record low. So I mean, overall, airlines are not getting the credit they deserve, and you can see it in the very, very low trading multiples.
One final question on the Mexican market. Can you just give us the breakdown between yourself and the other two carriers, roughly?
You mean in market share? Or
market share.
Well, market shares, domestic market share, Viva will be the first one, like 37, Volaris very close, 25, and Aeromexico following. So it's pretty much the market split three ways. Internationally, Aeromexico is a larger carrier given their wide body operation, then Volaris and then Viva. Overall, it's a very competitive market.
For sure.
The three airlines are performing well.
But sorry, JC. Let's say we, and I love saying we when I talk about Viva Aerobus because it's in my blood, as you know. So we are around 37, 38?
More or less percent, domestic.
Okay, and then give me the breakdown of Aeromexico and Volaris.
Volaris will be perhaps 33%, and Aeromexico
the rest. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. I think people talk a lot about your age when you became CEO. I have to say it never entered into my mind, and I'm not trying to be goody two-shoes here. It just really didn't enter my mind. But do you think it matters in hindsight?
Look, I mean, I've always said that yes, I was very young, 29 years old when I was appointed on this responsibility. You are never ready to take a big job.
No matter what age you are.
And still you are not, right? I mean, so my view is there's not such thing as good luck, right? A good luck, there's an old saying that says when you combine preparation and opportunity. So you need to be ready, right? And every day you need to try to become a better person, a better human being, right? So if you are continue learning, right,
For sure.
you'll be there, right? Of course, we try and collaborate and try and get good advice from everybody from the industry, outside the industry.
Yeah.
But look, it's been a hell of a ride.
And JC, you look 29 still. You owe me a beer, young man. Listen, that rolls into the next one. One of our questions is, which CEO would you like to have a bit of dinner with and a beer, and why?
There's two persons which are that very similar generations and age, and I'd like to invite them for a beer, if I could, or a whiskey, and that'll be Herb Kelleher and your dad, Tony Ryan.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to meet your dad in the early days. And from what I read of both, I mean, they're very similar personalities. So I like to hear their stories. Ask Herb, why on earth is he invented unassigned seating, right? Because he could have done a favor to the aviation if he didn't.
If you had that, I love your choices. Not just because he's my dad, because I think you'd have a good time, and you know how much he loved Mexico as well. But I think if you had that dinner, I think Tony would go to bed around 11 and Herb would keep you up till 4 a.m. or something else like that. One of the questions, and it's kind of driven by myself, and it's interesting when you ask people is, do you think we talk enough about safety in the industry?
I don't think so. And why is that? Because I believe airlines and the overall industry consider safety a table stake, like a given, right? I think there are subjects like safety, cybersecurity, fraud. These are subjects that I believe airlines, we talk to each other very often. There's a lot of forums, events that we fly, that we participate, and that we're in constant communication with other airlines to share best practice, etc. But I think we're not giving the amount of visibility it deserves, right? OEMs also play an important role in my view, right? And potentially in the last 5 to 10 years, they're getting a lot of heat with all the events that happen with the MAX, etc. But I believe airlines at the end were the ultimate responsibles of flying and operating, right? So I think that we need to spend more time in benchmarking, in sharing, and learning from each other in the industry, right?
The comparison I always make is the car industry, and the car industry talks about safety all the time, particularly Volvo and Mercedes and so on. Maybe it's because people are driving their own cars, so that's maybe given and so on. But I don't think we should be doing advertisements, but I think we should talk about it a bit more. And but listen, if Air Mexico is not talking about it, it's hard for other Mexican carriers, and same if Lufthansa is not talking about it, and so on and so on. If we put you in charge of being in the White House, what's the one thing you would do for aviation? Be it in the world or in the US. And the reason I ask that, as we know, it's 200 of the main airports around the world are in the US.
I think thinking on the greener side, if I was in charge of a big public policy with that amount of power, I would heavily incentivize SAF production, right? And also heavily incentivize research and development on the hydrogen and electric part for commercial aviation. At the end, I don't believe the OEMs, of course, all of the big OEMs have already pledged to be net zero for 2050, etc. But I believe they need to be pushed harder by the big governments, right, to reach faster to this, right? I mean, if you look at the engine technology, it every 20 years or every 25 years, it advances a little bit more, right? But we should challenge ourselves as an industry. We could push harder, and of course, airlines, we should be early adopters of this type of technology that we did when the Neo engines came out. We were first in Latin America. So I think that's something that is going to be critical. Even though aviation only contributes for 3% of world's pollution, I think we could do better. Such the same as we're seeing the car, right? So I think that should be a challenge.
Okay. My own personal one is ATC. And somebody has called it the Manhattan Project. And there was a headline recently. Yeah, exactly. There was a headline recently in the New York Times that last summer they only had like 60% of the manpower they needed for ATC. And, you know, if you look at the three big airports in New York, that's just nuts. And the other thing, as you know, JC, and we've changed it over here in Ireland, is the regulator is the owner of ATC, which, you know, just that should be divided, you know.
Absolutely. And I think ATC is one of the biggest puzzles to decipher, but I believe in the future ATC should rely less in humans. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's not a very popular job.
Yeah, very
number
good.
One.
Yeah, very good point.
So hopefully in the future with AI and other technologies, we could automate as much possible to have the most efficient ATC period. Right.
Yeah. And you know, it's also incredibly stressful job, and you know, you do have to think quickly on your feet and all that kind of stuff. SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. Do you think it's a fix, or do you think it's fake?
I think right now is the only short-term solution airlines have. Unfortunately, it's unaffordable, right?
Yeah.
Given that there's a very, very little incentives on the production side. Yes, many airlines like Viva, we're starting to use a little bit of SAF in very few airports, etc. But with the current economics, it's unviable, period. I mean, we go out of business if we'll be forced to use 100% SAF. So I think here's the chicken or the egg, right? At the end, we need to incentivize SAF production for prices to come down. But my view is that eventually a more effective propulsion system technologies should start coming around the corner. So I think SAF will start growing its footprint with more government intervention, more government subsidies, incentives. But at the end, I don't believe this is going to be the end game. I think similar as we see on the car industry, right? I mean, they didn't went through SAF. I mean, they went directly from gas to electric, right?
Yeah, I think it was Air New Zealand recently put their hands up and were honest about it. Said they're just not going to meet the goals, and I think the industry, and I include the lessors and all that they're playing a game because they seem to be involved with it, but they know the targets aren't achievable, and they just need to kind of get a grip of that and so on. Who's your favorite airline, and why?
Of course, Viva Aerobus. And why? Because our people, our culture, we love it. I mean, it's so fun to work for Viva.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, we're now 4,500 people.
Yeah.
So still enjoying the early day culture, and I couldn't be more proud of being part of this team.
Yeah. Culture is so important there, isn't it? And how do you first of all, what would you describe as your culture? And then how do you, as the boss, keep it going?
I think the most important part of the culture is allowing people to speak up freely, right? I mean, eliminating every single part of barrier. Still, when you arrive to Viva in our headquarters, you see management interacting with pilots every day, with no middlemen like unions in between, with line techs, having headquarters in the same place where the operation happens in the airports.
Yeah,
normally you see the legacy airlines moving to the city centers and very, very high buildings. So, I mean, that part of the culture, being very close with the front line, allows people to feel part of, right? And second, there's nothing to hide, right? I mean, in Viva, even though we're still a private company with some public debt, we share news on a daily basis. We share our P&L, everything, good days, bad days, to everyone. Everybody knows exactly how the company is doing, when there are good days, when there are bad days. When we had a good profit year, we share profits with the people. So having this closeness with 100% of your staff, you are part of something at the end. I mean, and that creates a strong culture. After COVID, just a small story, Dec, as you know, in Latin America, we didn't got any government aid. So we needed to survive on our own. So we asked people to take a 50% pay cut.
Wow.
Without any indication on when it will end.
Yeah.
So after three months on COVID, we saw no signs of recovery. So we told people, look, this is going to be for quite a long time. Let's put ourselves a target. When the company recovers 50%, we're going to increase 50% of volume. We're going to increase to 60% of the pay.
Yeah.
And when we get to 60%, so on, right, until we get to 100.
Yeah.
Of course, it took us like 1 year to recover full salaries, but we owe the people. We didn't owe them. People were putting 50% of their salaries for 1 year. Nobody was expecting that money to come back, right?
Yeah.
Then 2021, we had a record year of recovery. And we decided the right thing to do was to get the unpaid portion to a staff back in full.
Yeah.
That was such an amazing message. People were not expecting. Guys, everybody participated. We shared the pain, and we need to share the gains, right? Next thing, before we start recovering from the pandemic, paying suppliers, etc. But staff is always number one in front. If we take care of people, they will take care of passengers, right?
Yeah. And what through my Colombian experience, and I'll touch upon that in a minute, one point we have to make is that those aren't really big salaries compared to what the people were getting in the US. And the US government totally subbed. Like, if somebody had the balls, JC, you could have sued the US government for unfair practices, but you'd probably be tied up in court for a long time. But so we had a terrible situation in Colombia. As you know, the airways down there closed for 6 months. But through the foundation, the Viva Air Foundation, we were doing food parcels for other people, not in the airline and so on. And then all of a sudden we started the cabin crew salary was halved, and it wasn't a big salary in the first place. And a lot of them were single moms and amazing people. But then we got requests for our food parcels, and that really rang home that somebody in Viva Colombia, needed food parcels, and so
wow.
It was incredible.
It was. People in the developed world don't realize how tough it was for a pandemic part of the world. Right? I mean, you were on your own. I mean, people. If you didn't continue working, I mean, you were not getting a check every month like in the US or in Germany or UK, right? I mean, you were on your own. You need to find your way out. Period.
Well, I remember one of my kids asking me about social distancing in Colombia, and I said, "How can you social distance when you have two families in an apartment? You just can't. So it was a kind of freaky time, wasn't it? It was scary and freaky, and we didn't know where it was going to end up. So my last question to you is, talk to me about the hiking and the walking, and are we hiking and walking, or are we walking and marathons and so on? How's that all going?
Yeah, I think both. Dec, right now I'm gonna do my 10th marathon in Las Vegas in early November.
Wow!
First time Las Vegas organizes a full marathon.
Yeah.
It's downhill, so it's a good course.
Yeah.
And I try to do one good hike every year here in a local volcano in Mexico called Pico Orizaba. Yeah. The altitude is 5,700 meters.
Yeah.
It's a big glacier.
Yeah.
It's a super fun experience.
Yeah.
So look, this is the type of things you need to continue doing with friends or even with some people in Viva. We run together to keep you active and energy.
So sorry to cross you, but I know how much you're interested in marathons as well. So is the Vegas course quite difficult?
It's difficult because, of course, it's a very dry part of the world, right? Yeah. And it's a downhill run, right? So you start like in the mountains and you end in Las Vegas, downtown there, where the pawn shops are and everything.
Yeah.
I've never run in Vegas more than 5 or 10 Ks. It's going to be November, so I don't know how the sun is going to be here.
Yeah.
But look, we're very super excited. And as you know, we have our partners there and the Allegiant guys.
Yeah. They're great.
But
by the way, and this is me going off on a tangent, but will there be weather issues there? Because it will be cold in the morning, won't it?
Very cold, yeah. I don't think, hopefully it doesn't rain, right?
Yeah.
But look, I've done marathons. I did one marathon in Miami with rain, the 42 kilometers pouring.
Yeah.
Right? So it's...
Oh, really?
So let's see what happens.
I'll leave you with a funny story. My son Jack qualified for Boston, which is pretty amazing. It's very hard to achieve. Anyway, Boston next year is 2 weeks before his wedding, and he came over with his fiancée, and she wasn't very happy that he was going to do the marathon 2 weeks before the wedding. And she says to me, Dec, can you do something with your son? And I said, why? He said, well, he might get injured. And I turned around to Jack and I said, why don't you have your stag party over there as well?
We can join.
Exactly. JC, that was fantastic. And as you know, I always love talking to you, and I'm a big admirer of you. And your story with Viva Aerobus in Mexico is world class. Well done, sir. Bye.
You've been listening to Aer Dogs, brought to you by Irelandia Aviation and in conjunction with the Aer Dogs book by Tom Lyons. If you enjoyed listening to this interview, please subscribe or leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts.